My sister, the CEO, laughed when I handed a sketchbook to a homeless kid, said I was more useless than the starving kids I try to help. So at her gala, I exposed her for pension fraud. Security dragged her out mid-toast. I hadn't expected it to turn into a disaster, not at first. That night was supposed to be mine, a small celebration of something I was proud of. My name is Oliver. I'm 38 years old, and I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm an architect, independent, self-employed, and finally at a point where I could afford to put my name on something other than a blueprint. The gallery was modest but modern. I'd helped sponsor the opening, design the renovation plans pro bono, and even curated some of the featured pieces. My name was printed on the little thank you banner near the entrance. That alone made my chest feel tight in a good way. I invited my family. I shouldn't have. My sister Veronica showed up first, of course. Always early when there was attention to steal. She wore this absurdly sleek blazer that screamed boardroom dominance, even at an art event. CEO of Caldwell Structures, our late father's construction company. She inherited it. I walked away from it. Wow, she said, scanning the room like it was beneath her. You actually got people to show up to this little passion project of yours. It's not a passion project, I replied calmly. It's a community gallery. The space used to be a condemned laundromat. She smirked. Exactly. We walked through the exhibit with my mother trailing behind us, nodding politely but mostly distracted by the wine and cheese. Veronica kept asking loud questions that weren't really questions. And how do you make money doing this, again? So, no actual clients here, right? You're really not coming back to the company? Each one a little jab dressed up in fake curiosity. Outside, just before I stepped back and after getting some air, I saw a young guy with a beat-up duffel bag sitting on the sidewalk, sketching. Probably in his late teens, thin, hoodie pulled tight, focused like the world didn't exist beyond the page. I watched him for a second, then ducked into the corner shop nearby and came back with a fresh sketchbook and a meal voucher from the sandwich place next door. When I handed them to him, he looked up, eyes wide. For real? I nodded. Just keep drawing. That should have been the end of it. But Veronica had followed me out. Oh, here we go, she said, rolling her eyes. Oliver the Virtuous. Buying redemption like it's on sale. I didn't say anything. She didn't stop. You know, you're actually more useless than the starving kids you try to save. At least they have an excuse. What's yours? The words hit like ice water, loud enough for a couple nearby guests to glance over. I stood there, jaw tight, staring at her without saying a thing. She smirked and walked back inside like she just wants something. I stayed out a little longer, not ready to face a room full of people pretending not to have heard. I didn't make a scene. I wish I could say I stood up for myself, clapped back with something clever, something final. But that's never been me. I just walked back into the gallery and finished the event in silence. People still smiled. They still shook my hand. The director gave a small speech and thanked the generous contributors, nodding in my direction. But the warmth in the room felt fake after what happened outside. I wasn't angry, not yet. Mostly I felt exposed. Like she'd peeled something raw inside me and left it out for everyone to see. Veronica, on the other hand, was in her element. She laughed a little too loudly, name-dropped company partnerships, told some story about getting a hotel chain deal that apparently saved the city council's asses. Every sentence was a flex. I mean, what can I say? She told a small circle near the bar. Some of us chose to be useful. Others, well, they hand out pencils and think they've solved poverty. They all laughed. I stood 10 feet away, staring at a sculpture I didn't even like. My throat felt tight. My hands, shoved in my pockets, wouldn't stop clenching. Eventually, I left without saying goodbye. I doubt anyone noticed. My mom had disappeared into some corner talking about grandkids she probably would never get. Veronica was too busy holding court. As I stepped outside, the air hit colder than before. I spotted the kid again, the street artist. He'd found a patch of light under the overhang and was already flipping through the new sketchbook I'd given him. A sandwich wrapper sat on the ground beside him, half-eaten. He didn't see me watching. But I saw him, and in that moment, something shifted. It was the quiet that got to me. That silent, ungrateful world I'd built around Veronica's noise. I'd let her be the voice of our family for too long. The one who decided what success looked like. What was respectable. What mattered. I stood there for a while, watching this kid draw like it was the only thing that made sense in the world. It hit me harder than I expected. I used to feel like that. Back when I still believed in building something real. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I opened an old file folder tucked in the back of my bookshelf, one labeled Caldwell Legacy Holdings. Tax records. Shareholder agreements. I had helped fund the company after Dad died. I signed papers. Transferred money. I had no idea where any of it actually went. But now I was ready to find out. The next morning, I called Simone Caldwell. She wasn't family by blood, but she might as well have been. She'd worked with my dad since the early days, handling company finances back when he still used a flip phone and paper ledgers. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 2 years. She picked up on the third ring. Oliver, she said, surprised. Haven't heard from you in a while? I know, I said. I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me. There was a long pause. Then, I'm listening. We met that afternoon in a quiet booth at a cafe near the outskirts of town. She looked older than I remembered. Tired in a way that doesn't come from age. She wore a scarf even though it was warm outside, like she was always trying to stay protected from something. Let me guess, she said as soon as we Saturday, you're finally ready to stop pretending Veronica knows what she's doing. Something like that. Simone leaned back. What do you want to know? Everything. At first, she was hesitant. Then I told her I wasn't there to protect the company. I was there to protect the truth. And whatever scraps of integrity Dad's legacy had left. Simone took a deep breath. All right, then. What she showed me over the next 2 hours made my skin crawl. Shell contracts to companies that didn't exist, just P.O. boxes tied to Veronica's friends from her MBA program. Business expenses for trips that read more like honeymoons. Credit card charges labeled client hospitality that matched up with high-end spas, jewelry stores, and even private jets. Then the worst part. The pension fund. There was supposed to be a protected account for long-time employees, people who had been with the firm for 20 or 30 years. Simone had set it up herself. But the balance was off. Way off. Where did it go? I asked, though I already knew. Simone tapped her pen against the folder. Into Caldwell's executive bonuses. And into Veronica's personal accounts. I flagged it once, and she told me to drop it or be replaced. I felt sick. I had signed off on some of those budgets back when I still trusted her. I hadn't asked questions because I didn't want to make waves. I had been a silent investor, emphasis on silent. And she'd used my silence to prop up a fantasy lifestyle. I flipped through the folder again. Dozens of line items. It wasn't just greed. It was theft. Deliberate. Organized. Ongoing. I had funded this. My money had gone to this. She's been laundering through company subsidiaries, Simone added, her voice low. But you already guessed that, didn't you? I nodded. My hands trembled slightly as I closed the folder. I thought back to that moment outside the gallery, to Veronica's voice cutting through the dark. More useless than starving kids. And I realized she wasn't just cruel. She was protected by a lie I had helped build. No more. I'm going to bring her down, I said. Simone met my eyes. Then I'll help you. The plan took weeks. I couldn't rush it, not with what was at stake. I spent my days back in my studio, working quietly, designing facades for boutique stores and residential projects. But at night, I was knee-deep in spreadsheets, bank statements, and internal memos. Simone helped me connect the dots. She still had access to certain reports. And I, as a shareholder, had rights Veronica hoped I'd forgotten. I didn't forget. Not this time. We built the report piece by piece. Fraud. Embezzlement. Violations of fiduciary responsibility. False reporting to the board. Missing pension disbursements. By the time it was done, it was nearly 200 pages of hard proof. We didn't go to the press. Not yet. That would have made it a scandal, and I didn't want a scandal. I wanted justice. The real strategy was the board. Dad's old board. Half of them were still around. Still loyal, not to Veronica, but to the Caldwell name. To him. I started with Anthony Carr, a senior member who had once taken me fishing when I was 10. We met in private. I gave him the highlights. His face paled before I finished the first page. Is this real? I nodded. You don't need to take my word for it. Look at the footnotes. Every figure's documented. Every account tied back to her. He closed the folder slowly, then sighed. God help us. Over the next 10 days, I met with 4 more board members, one at a time. No drama. No big declarations. Just facts. By the end of it, I had enough support to call for an emergency audit quietly, but officially. Simone filed the motion through a legal firm she trusted. The ball was rolling. Meanwhile, Veronica had no idea. She was planning a gala. Her 10 years as CEO celebration. She called it the Legacy Gala, which was rich, considering she was gutting the legacy from the inside out. Invitations went out to half the city, officials, investors, media. Even me. My invite arrived in a black envelope with silver lettering and a smug little handwritten note. Hope you can behave this time. XO-V. I pinned it to my fridge. I RSVP'd the same day. Yes. No +1. No dietary restrictions. No notes. Just yes. Let her polish her empire one last time. Let her bask in the spotlight, thinking no one saw what was really underneath. She had no idea her final audience would be her jury. The night of the gala, everything sparkled. Gold-trimmed tablecloths. Crystal chandeliers. Waiters in white gloves gliding across the ballroom with trays of champagne. Veronica always did know how to throw a party. That wasn't the problem. The problem was she thought she was untouchable. I showed up in a simple black suit. No bow tie. No flash. Just enough to blend in. People smiled politely. Some shook my hand like they couldn't quite remember my name. Oliver Caldwell, I said, each time. I helped fund the foundation's expansion in 17. That usually brought a pause. Recognition. A little flicker of discomfort. Veronica spotted me just after the second round of speeches. She waltzed over with a flute of something bubbly and that CEO smile she wore like armor. You clean up well, she said, eyes scanning me like she was looking for something to mock. Glad you didn't bring your little sidewalk Picasso this time. I smiled. Thought I'd keep it elegant. Curated, even. She chuckled. See? You're learning. She floated away before I could say more, busy with her high society rotation. People who called her by nickname. People who never asked questions. The band played jazz, the shrimp was flown in from the coast, and the centerpieces probably cost more than my old car. And then the lights dimmed. Veronica took the stage, bathed in a warm golden spotlight. The backdrop glowed with her name, Veronica Caldwell, 10 years of vision. She gave a short speech, slick, charming, just humble enough to sound rehearsed. And finally, she said, holding her glass up, to our loyal investors, our team, and the city that believed in us, thank you. We've built more than buildings. We've built a future. Polite applause. That's when I stepped forward. I didn't ask for the mic. I didn't make a scene. I simply walked up beside her, envelope in hand. Veronica, I said, calmly. Before we toast again, I think there's something our guests and board members should see. She blinked. The smile faltered. What the hell are you doing? She muttered, voice low. Being useful, I replied. I turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I won't take much of your time, but I believe it's important that we all know exactly what kind of legacy we're celebrating. I opened the envelope and handed out copies to the front row, board members first. Then I projected a slide onto the screen behind her, disbursements to non-existent contractors, 2022 to 2024. Every entry matched one of Veronica's private accounts. A hush swept over the room. Gasps. Murmurs. Veronica stepped forward, grabbing the mic. This is ridiculous, she said, laughing too hard. This is a stunt. He's bitter. He always has been. Another slide. Pension funds, withheld payments and discrepancies. A timestamp. An audit trail. Then the final nail. An offshore account, I said, turning to the crowd. Registered under Caldwell Legacy Holdings. Used to transfer stolen pension funds and company money for personal gain. Board members stood. A few guests took out their phones. Veronica's face went white. Security came in quietly, like we'd planned. Her husband tried to argue. One of the guards whispered something to him, and he backed away fast. The mic squealed once as Veronica stepped back. This isn't over, she hissed. No, I said. But your reign is. The gala ended early. After the presentation, no one touched dessert. Conversations turned hushed and careful, like people were afraid the truth might still be contagious. The board convened the next morning emergency session, full attendance. I wasn't surprised when they asked me to join. Veronica didn't show, didn't call in, didn't send her lawyer. She was already gone. By that afternoon, her name had been scrubbed from the company website. Her access revoked. Her office sealed pending investigation. The board's vote was unanimous. She was out. Effective immediately. They didn't even debate it. There wasn't anything left to defend. They named me interim CEO. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even want the job, not really. But I knew someone had to clean up the mess. Someone who wouldn't treat the company like a personal piggy bank. Someone who remembered what it was supposed to be. I stepped into her office the next day. Sleek. Cold. Covered in awards she gave herself and photos she probably staged. I boxed it all up. Every crystal plaque. Every fake smiling photo with city officials. Every woman of influence frame. Gone. My first move wasn't to make a speech or schedule a press tour. I met with the accounting team. We dug through payroll. We called back the audit team. We got to work. Over the next few weeks, things moved fast. The authorities opened a formal investigation. The IRS got involved. Then the Department of Labor. And then, like a domino, everything else followed. Subpoenas, interviews, press coverage. Veronica's husband filed for divorce after the forensic audit uncovered her second hidden affair, this one with an architect she flew to Milan under the label client retention. The board filed a civil suit for restitution. Some of the employees who had quietly endured her regime finally began to speak up. But none of that gave me joy. Not really. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wanted to rebuild. And I knew exactly where to start. I launched a new initiative, Caldwell Future Fund, a scholarship program for underprivileged artists and architects. The first recipient? The young street artist from outside the gallery. His name was Dante. Simone tracked him down through the local shelter. He'd just started GED classes. We brought him in for lunch at the office. Gave him the check. A sketchbook was tucked inside the welcome folder. He didn't say much, just stared at the paper like it might vanish if he blinked. Before he left, he turned to me. Why me? I smiled. Because you remind me what this is all supposed to be about. Veronica always wanted a legacy people could see from the outside. I was starting to think the real ones are built quietly, one person at a time. The sentencing came 6 months later. Federal court. No press allowed inside, but the media still camped outside the courthouse like bloodhounds. I didn't attend the trial. Simone did. So did 2 board members and 3 former employees who'd lost part of their pensions. I stayed away on purpose, not out of fear, but to make a point. This wasn't about me. It was about what she did. Veronica Caldwell was found guilty on all counts: corporate fraud, wire fraud, pension theft, tax evasion, obstruction of justice. The judge didn't mince words. Called it a willful, calculated betrayal of public and private trust. She got 15 years, no parole for at least 10. I read the verdict online, sitting at the same cafe where I first met with Simone. I didn't cheer. I didn't even smile. But I did feel something I hadn't in a long time: closure. Her name vanished from the headlines almost as quickly as it had flooded them. Her social circle evaporated. The same people who toasted her brilliance and posed beside her at charity galas now pretended not to know her. Even her favorite PR firm deleted her profile from their success stories page. And me? I kept my head down. I turned down interviews. Declined every glossy magazine profile. Let the company's work speak for itself. We launched our first affordable housing project 2 months after her conviction. I asked Simone to oversee it personally. She cried when I told her. "Your father would have been proud," she said. Maybe. I hope so. The scholarship fund grew. We got private donations, small business sponsors, even a grant from the city. We called it the second line, a nod to rebuilding, to giving people a place to start over. Dante, the young artist I'd met that night outside the gallery, submitted a portfolio to a regional art competition in Raleigh. A few weeks later, he won. The photo showed him holding his sketchbook, standing in front of his winning piece, a cityscape filled with shadows and fire escapes and hidden light. He looked stunned, like he hadn't quite caught up to what was happening. In his quote to the local paper, he thanked a stranger who gave me a chance when no one else did. He didn't use my name. Didn't need to. I closed the article, leaned back in my chair, and looked out the window. Sunlight poured over the sidewalk. People passed, rushing to whatever mattered next. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. Legacy wasn't about buildings or bank accounts. It was about what you left behind when no one was looking.